Megan, can you make me a panelist, please?
Good morning, and I want to welcome you to our early morning webinar. Thank you so much for making time bright and early on this Monday morning to join us for this call. I want to point out, as you've seen on the slide initially, that there is a place for you to submit on the Slido the questions, any that you might have. We're going to respond to those in a few minutes. But I just wanted to start out this morning by once again thanking you for being here. I'm Charles Dupree, as you know, superintendent of the school district. And we have several other individuals on the call with us as well that I will call on as needed to respond to any questions that I can't respond to. My goal is not to get into a lot of weeds and a lot of detail today, but I wanted to do just a meeting with our teachers directly to address some of the concerns that I'm hearing and to kind of give an overview, if you will, share a little bit more detail and info about kind of where we are as an organization right now. We've been in school for many weeks now, and we're heading into this week the transition that we've known was coming for quite a while. The transition where we're going to be running dual systems of instruction in Fort Bend ISD. And I want to talk through some of the logistics of this in a minute, but more importantly, I want you to understand I want to provide you some understanding and knowledge about the organization you're working in right now and kind of how we got where we are. So let me talk just a minute about the fact we've been dealing with this pandemic since March. We have a team of leaders who've worked exceptionally hard during that entire time. And you read about this in my emails and you've watched my videos. And so I know that you know generally what we've been doing, but I want you to understand again a full appreciation of what I would consider to be the box we're in right now as an organization. First and foremost in Fort Bend, our focus is on student achievement. But in this pandemic, our teacher care and the workload, the stress, the fears, the anxieties of our teachers is also an exceptionally high priority. Because as you've heard me say many times, we cannot have education, we cannot educate our students without teachers in the classroom who are equipped and ready to serve those kiddos. So I want you to know that we never lose sight of that in all of our planning. The other box we're in, if you will, is the box of school funding right now. And I want to talk about that for a minute because that will help provide some understanding about some of the decisions we've made. Right now, you know, we're being funded for synchronous and asynchronous education. What we've not talked so much about is the fact that, like every district in the state, we have lost about 3,000 to 4,000 students between last year and this year. We're trying to find these students, but we don't know where they are. You know, we're calling phone numbers, we're sending attendance officers to reach out to them. We're trying to identify where they are, but we know that because of the pandemic, in our international community, we have many students who may have simply returned to their home country for care with family members while their parents are working. And we actually have some students learning from across the sea right now, but there's also many, many students that are not accounted for. You know, the state allows us, we can track students that have gone to other districts, to charter schools, to private schools, but we have students that are just unaccounted for that we cannot identify. We knew this was going to happen going into this year. And on a call last week with other superintendents, we all shared that it's in the thousands across all of them, everyone from Houston to Spring to Alief to Lamar. We all have unaccounted for students. So Fort Bend is not alone in that. Nor are we alone in the fact that the TEA, or Texas Education Agency, has committed to holding us harmless. That means they're going to average our funding based on last year's enrollment for the first 12 weeks of the school year. But at this point in time, once we get past the first 12 weeks, our actual attendance and enrollment numbers are going to be what our funding is based on. Now, since summer, we've been telling the commissioner that we expect to have an enrollment drop the entire year. But the answer so far has been, we're going to hold you harmless. We're going to fund you for the 12 weeks. And then what happens after that is on the district. So what that means in reality for us is we could potentially risk $18 million in revenue that would be lost this year because of the drop of enrollment. And again, I want to point out every district in the state is facing the same challenge right now. which is why, in a minute, I'm going to ask for your help on this issue because we need you to be advocating for our district. But more importantly, for the moment, I want you to understand that as we ask our teachers to take on heavy loads, that is the reason for that. Some have asked us, I've heard from teachers on a number of occasions, how come you're asking me to have larger class sizes than I normally would? Well, this is why. First of all, there's not an abundance of teachers to go hire right now in September and October. Even if we could go find those, needed more teachers, there's not more to go hire. But furthermore, we're in a position where we may be needing to reduce our budget mid-year. Now, I say that very guardedly, and I know I'm saying it to a large group of people publicly. So I also want you to hear me very clearly say, we have strategies in policy, and we already have ideas about how we will need to cover that deficit if needed, using fund balances and other budget reduction measures. We are not at all talking about reduction in force, laying off anybody, putting anybody out of work. That is not part of the conversation at all. So I want to be transparent to let you know, as you think about the load you're being asked to carry, that part of it is based in, a lot of it is based in fact, that even if quality teachers were available to hire, we do not have the means or resources to go do that right now. And so I just want you to understand that's why the focus has been on building highly efficient, tight schedules that are using every teacher to their full capacity. That's why we're asking some teachers to teach kids from other schools. Some teachers will be temporarily deployed to teach at other schools face-to-face, because we need every single teacher in our organization to be with kids to the full extent possible. I've also received some questions about why we're granting accommodations to teachers who submit them to HR and why we're allowing the teachers to work from home. And I think there may be some misunderstanding about that and the fact that we're just letting people submit an accommodation and they get to work from home. That is not the case. At this point, we've had nearly 1,000 staff members. Now that's all staff, not just teachers, submit accommodations, and many have been granted, but many have also been declined, and there are still hundreds that are under consideration. So it's not a simple process to just get to work from home. So I want to make sure that we're very clear that we're not just allowing that for no reason. Those who are granted are asked to provide medical documentation, because we're not in the business of evaluating individuals' mental health or their physical health. But if they submit the request through HR with appropriate documents and appropriate healthcare support, then we're obligated to honor the healthcare professionals' recommendations. But in many districts, what they're doing is they're sending folks home on leave, many of them using all of their leave. And that's a very negative impact on teachers who have a legitimate healthcare concern. It's also a negative impact on the organization, because that is teachers that are removed from the teaching pool that cannot be assigned, which in turn then increases the load on those who are still in the classroom, in the building, working to educate students. So our process has been in Fort Bend that if someone has an accommodation that is approved for medical reasons, we are allowing many to work from home if they're able to do so, to help balance the load on all teachers, because that puts more teachers in the pot to spread the students among. So please know that we are dedicated to serving our students, but we also are trying to manage your load and your well-being at the same time. One thing I'm going to do, and this I'll mention this again at the end, but I want you to appreciate that I get it. I know, and our board of trustees knows, that all of this load of carrying student education during this pandemic is falling on the shoulders of the teachers. I understand that. I understand, and I hear it directly from teachers every day via email, through personal contact, through personal conversation. I've even been dropping in classes, watching so many of our wonderful teachers do a remarkable job. I love being able to be in my office and just join a Zoom classroom. It really has given me more access to more classrooms directly. And I see all you're doing. And I know that behind what's happening in that classroom is a different and unique type of planning that you've ever done before. So please understand that your well-being and the appreciation of that load you're carrying is not lost in the boardroom or in your superintendent's office. And so what I want to be able to do is, I'm always interested in removing anything we can remove to help your life be easier. On the best day, even when we're not in a pandemic, we want our teachers to feel valued and supported. But especially today, we know how heavy the load is. So in the next week, I'm going to begin a series of teacher listening sessions. Well, you'll be invited, and this will be any teacher can sign up to participate, because I want to hear directly with a few members of the leadership team at the table with me. I want to hear directly from you about some way, number one, some really good things, some successes that you're enjoying and ideas you would share with other teachers for success, and things that you think our organization would benefit from. But I also want to hear if there's something that's just making your life harder that we can help remove, that we can manage a different way, that we can help you feel successful right now. I do know, again, I just can't reiterate just how important the work is that you're doing. You know that. It's why you do it. And I'm so proud when I hear of the good things that are going on and your successes. But I also know the load that you carry. And you hear me talk about all the people at Central Admin who are putting the planning together. But I know that all of their plans, all of our plans, are reflected in your work in the classroom. And I appreciate all that you're doing. I'd like, Megan, if you would please put the slide deck on the screen for just a minute. I wanted to go ahead and talk through a couple of slides as we go through. This first slide I wanted to talk about really is just an overview of what's going to happen during the next few weeks. First of all, September 23rd is the day we've asked all staff to return to campus. On that day, and on Thursday and Friday, kind of the empty gray box between September 23rd and September 28th, that allows for 3 days of asynchronous education for all of our students. So I know right now many of you are still teaching synchronously and you're preparing for those 3 days, or you will be, but then you'll be able, but those 3 days are going to be dedicated to planning, and I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. And then on September 28th, we're going to bring our pre-K babies and kindergartners into the elementary buildings. They'll have a couple of days to kind of get used to routines, and staff will get used to having kids back in the building. Until on the 30th, we'll bring in first grade. And then on Friday the 2nd, we'll bring in second grade. And you can kind of see we're staging students 1 grade level at a time or 2 grade levels at a time in the elementary to be able to bring them back in, start building our student body back up in our buildings. On Monday the 5th, we'll have 6th and 9th report. And then you can see we have the 7th and 10th on Wednesday the 7th, before our 11th, 12th, and our 8th graders will be back in the building for 1 day on October 9th. And then on Monday the 12th, all students will be back in face-to-face who desire that, who have chosen that. You may know that we have 60% of our students who are remaining online. And so that's important because I know many have asked about teacher load, teacher assignment. And so basically, if you think about it just in the most logical way, you see that all teachers are teaching virtually right now. But for the 60% of students who want to remain online, they'll still need their virtual teachers. But the 40% that are coming into the face-to-face environment, we're having to pull teachers now out of the virtual environment into the classroom environment. So that is going to, in turn, shift the balance. And of course, because of social distancing in the face-to-face environment, that means the class sizes will be relatively smaller. Now, there's been some discussion and misinformation, and part of that's our fault from the district level, because we've talked about a 45 square foot per student ratio. We're actually going to work in a range based on some updated CDC and TEA guidelines, where it could be 36, it could be even smaller. Our students are going to be wearing masks, and so we're going to manage our class sizes according to keep them safe, but we're going to have a range of class sizes. They will not be 35 and 40 students in the face-to-face environment, but they will be somewhat, they'll be to the fullest extent that we can get them. Let me put it that way. I also want to acknowledge that, we recognize that the face-to-face teaching is very different than the online teaching. So our commitment has been, we're going to manage the teacher's overall load. That means we want to minimize, where possible, the number of preps a teacher has, which is one way to manage their load. So that means you might have the same prep, but you might teach it online and face-to-face. And we know that's not exactly the same lesson planning, but it's an extension of the same planning. But the other aspect of our managing teacher load is that we want to keep the range of students that you serve comparable to what it would be in a typical face-to-face school year. So I know some are concerned about the sizes of their online class right now, but just know that we're looking at the overall makeup of your class, your overall student load in regard to grading and preparation and teaching and all the things that go in to serving our students. So just know that we're working. Now, that is not to say that there won't be outliers, that we're going to have some people who have heavier loads than others. We're looking at ways to make up that, to give you extra planning time in the day, to do things to help our teachers be able to have the time to do their job well, and to also have a degree of balance in their life. Let's go on to the next slide, if you would, Megan. What's going to happen, as I mentioned earlier, September 23rd through the 25th, is we've put systems in place to allow teachers on those 3 days adequate time, lots of time to learn about what this transition is going to look like. We want you to be prepared to really begin teaching in dual environments. The other thing, through asynchronous learning, it's going to give you time to do grading for this term, but we're also going to have to shut down aspects of the system for a period of time to retool and rebuild the schedules and republish and push, if you will, the new class assignments and new master schedule assignments. So all of that will be happening during the next several days, and really over the next week or so. But these next 3 days are dedicated to teachers having time in the building, preparing their classrooms, learning the things they need to learn to be able to be successful. When it comes to attendance taking for asynchronous, really the way we will measure is that students who show progress, and that means they've logged into the system, turned in assignments, and done some work, those students will be counted as present as long as they have engaged in remote asynchronous learning during those 3 days. There will not be synchronous instruction required during those 3 days. The other thing that's very critical, you may have read about this, is the summer, if you will, the summer PD, the evidence of practice model that we launched this summer. We have postponed that. What we realized is it was a great model, but it was just the wrong time. And I apologize for that. We should have tuned into the fact our teachers are learning so many things right now that is your PD. Honestly, you have been learning too many things at one time. Your load is heavy already. So we're going to lift that burden from teachers, and we're just going to freeze that, and we'll do a refresher at the appropriate time, hopefully next fall, and get that started again. But for this year, that is off the plate, and all the work you're doing now, the time you're putting in will count for those contract days, that PD time. Megan, if you go on to the next slide. A minute ago, I also spoke about kind of how we're going to use staff in the most efficient way. And this kind of comes into some of the questions that I see posted in the chat. So first of all, you're going to hear the term cross-entity staffing. So what that means is we might have face-to-face cross-entity. This is something we're doing extensively at the elementary outclass level, PE, music, and art. Teachers will physically move between different physical campuses for day-long assignments. Now, we're being very careful in all of this to say we are not reassigning any staff to another school, because we know that come January, it's likely we're going to have students shift from online to face-to-face. And we also know, probably even more importantly, is that our system, a school, is a family. And it's not easy, and it's not appropriate to just say, well, you're being reassigned, unless there's a really good reason to do that. And right now, with there being so much fluidity, our goal is to maintain the family unit of our schools, but ask individuals where needed to travel to a different campus a few days a week to teach other students who need them. Now, this cross-entity conversation and the temporary assignments that I'm discussing are based in the fact that we are all here for all students. All teachers are in Fort Bend are here to benefit all students as needed. And that's never been more important than it is today. That is the heart of equity and how we as an organization can ensure that we are supporting our kiddos to the full extent possible, all of our kids in all schools. And equity has been one of our top goals since we began this journey with COVID. Let me continue down. I've talked about face-to-face cross-entity. The other cross-entity faced staffing is online. So this means teacher has students from different campuses, but they're combined in one online class. That's actually happening right now very successfully. I've heard great feedback from teachers engaged in that, and also from students and parents who are very happy that their children are getting served with some classes that might not otherwise have made. Now, again, I want to depart from this slide for a minute to say this is important because our goal, again, in speaking of equity, if we allowed each campus to simply make their own master schedule, then that campus would meet the needs of their students. But each campus would also have gaps in their schedule because they just don't have the staffing available to make all the classes that students need. And that means we would have to restrict and eliminate some student offerings. So rather than do that, we've elected to keep the master schedule as strong as possible, but use these face-to-face and online cross-entity models to make sure that our students have access to the classes they've signed up for. We're also using distance learning, which is the third item on this slide. That this means face-to-face students who are in a classroom might receive instruction from a classroom teacher from another campus who's coming into the room virtually. But that's a way for a face-to-face students to access their education from a teacher who's well qualified from another campus as well as needed. We've talked about temporary assignments. Some teachers will be temporarily deployed to a different campus. Some teachers might be asked to teach something that they haven't taught in a while, but they're certified to teach. And I know how uncomfortable that can be, but it's another way that we have to leverage the full capacity of our staff. Right now, we can't have gaps in the schedule and just cancel things because we don't have teachers. Our students need these classes many times to earn credit. And so I know, again, it's going to be uncomfortable. If you're a teacher that's been teaching AP for years and years and years, you might be asked to teach a regular ed class. And we're going to support you, but we know you're capable of doing it, and we want you to be successful. But and this is where I'm asking for your help to accept these assignments with a positive attitude, knowing that our students are counting on you for these opportunities. Another type of temporary assignment would be is that a teacher is temporarily deployed to a different role and campus based on certification and need. Again, this all ties into using our team in the most efficient and effective way possible. Hey, Megan, if you could take the slide off, please. So really, I think I've hit on all my major points I wanted to hit on. Feel free to input any more questions. I see some here for me now. First question is, why do we need to teach from our classrooms if our students are online? So this is something we've talked a lot about, and it's rooted in the fact that this decision is based in the fact that we believe our team needs to be together. It allows for PLC, it allows for having all the resources and tools everyone needs in their classroom. And I do understand that people have done a great job of teaching from home. I think there's some excellent things going on from home right now. But we believe if we're teaching students in the building, we need our online teachers to be there as well, because there may be times we need them to shift down the hall, especially if they're not on an accommodation. We may need them to cover and substitute in a face-to-face environment from time to time. So I think there's a number of good reasons we need our team together in the workplace to make that happen, if for anyone who does not have an accommodation. When will final notices for accommodations be sent out? As I mentioned, we've had nearly 1,000, and it's taking time to process those. So some have already been sent. Others are being sent, they're being sent in real time as they're processed. I'll put it that way. So they were all date stamped, they're being processed in order. The way we're handling that right now is if someone has requested an accommodation, until it is processed thoroughly, we're treating it as if it's approved. And that's because our principals need to be able to build and finalize master schedules. So what could happen is we could end up with some who are approved, and then that person has been handled appropriately. They may be teaching from home, or they may be teaching in an isolated room on campus with no contact due to their accommodations, or the accommodation may be declined, which means they would teach 9 weeks according to the accommodation, but come January, if we need them, when we need them, they'll be transitioning back to the face-to-face environment if they didn't, if the accommodation was not approved. So as you can see, this is another way. There's just a lot of flexibility. And what I want you to hear in this is it's how we're trying to show care for our staff. Someone has asked, will we consider a pay raise or bonus? You know that we considered this. We talked openly about it in the summer, and this ties back to one of the areas I mentioned early on this call, on this meeting, is that the idea that right now we could potentially face an $18 million revenue shortage makes it very difficult for us to consider a pay raise or bonus at this time. Now, that is not to say if things clear up and the state does what they need to do and they hold us harmless, it's always possible the board could consider that. And because believe me, there's nothing more I would like to do right now than to recommend a pay raise or some kind of bonus for our teachers, because you are earning it every step of the way. But we have to look at the bottom line. It's not fiscally responsible to give that now if we know the reality is we'll be potentially making some significant budget cuts. So this is where, once we have more information from what the state is going to do, then I'm going to talk about this more in a minute, is how we will be able to make some more decisions about that later on. The question is, when can we expect to know our teaching assignment? Well, it's all happening right now. I know I've talked to a few teachers who are hearing from their principals. Thursday, Friday, and today, principals have gotten lots and lots of details. They've been working on master schedules for a while. So definitely you're going to have that assignment in the coming days, because I know elementaries are going to be beginning their meet the teachers and those kind of events. So you can expect that in the next several days, you're going to be hearing your teaching assignments. Are students required to get tested or quarantined before coming back to school if they're sent home with symptoms? Absolutely, yes, they are. And there's a whole website and the FBISD comprehensive plan that outlines exactly how we're going to handle any student who's had symptoms, close contact, or been diagnosed with COVID. So yes, there's going to be extensive quarantining where necessary to make sure that the school community is protected. How will the district compile and report COVID cases? Will teachers be notified if one of their students tests positive? Absolutely. We're already compiling and reporting that information. We have to report it to TEA. And you may note that we do have some students in our buildings already, some of our special education students, our learning centers. So we're already building these practices, but we're also doing contact tracing in our buildings. And what that means is any person, adult or student who's diagnosed, if there's an active case, everyone, a contact tracer will identify every person that student was in contact with. And that will include any teachers if they've been in their classroom, other students. And so it'll be a very complex, detailed process, but the goal is to make sure all the right people who could potentially have been exposed are notified and information given to quarantine. The next question says, we know this is an incredibly difficult situation. Though I may not agree with every choice made, I want to thank you. Thank you for valuing our lives. You better believe it. I value your lives. And I thank you for that affirming comment, because I know right now it's a very challenging season for you. And I don't want you ever to think that anyone in this organization believes you are expendable and that we can place you at risk. We believe in you, and I just cannot reiterate really the emotion I feel as I think about the reality of what our teachers are carrying. And I wish there was a way we could all lift that load from you. But all we can do is take off what we can and try to have the best systems in place and everything we can do to support you. So you need to keep letting us know how we can support you best. Next question is, some students use desktop computers. Will there be an additional technology pickup day during face-to-face? That will be coordinated through the campus. We're going to still make, we're operating as a virtually a one-to-one district. We call it one to need. We're not providing a device for every single student, but we are providing to those who need them. So yes, that will be part of the process as we transition, is campuses will coordinate that with parents and with their students to make sure those kiddos have the devices they need. Are we going to be allotted more days for absences due to illness? So that's a good question, and the answer is no. But I also want to clarify what I'm saying. So often we know that the reality is we're going to have teachers or staff members who have to quarantine, but they're not ill. That will not be charged against your leave time. In fact, what we want you to be able to do is to pivot. And if you're physically able to work, we want you to continue teaching from home. And again, you'll learn a lot about this, but the schedules that have been built are designed for you to be able to easily switch between online and face-to-face with the same schedule and the same students. So you might be at providing distance learning from home to students in your classroom if you are required to quarantine. We are not charging quarantine against teachers who can still work. And so just trust that we do not want you to use your leave days. The only time people will have to use their leave is if they are actually physically ill and unable to perform their job. This applies to students as well. This is one of the unique features of this year, is that our students can actually be home, and if they're able to engage in school virtually, they will not be counted as absent. So that's a big shift. But no, we are not allocating more days, but nor are we going to be charging you days for quarantine as long as you can continue to teach remotely from home. Can you explain how the online versus face-to-face teaching positions are equitable in terms of job load and hours? So that's a good question. Excuse me. And I'm going to be honest. I cannot stand here and say hour to hour, minute to minute, they are exactly equitable. But I can tell you that if you think in terms of the face-to-face teachers on campus, they will be preparing. They'll be doing various things to keep their room sanitized and clean. They will have duty stations. There's lots of things they will be doing in the face-to-face environment that online teachers will not be doing. At the same time, online teachers will be planning, preparing, doing synchronous, asynchronous office hours, and those kinds of things in a way that a face-to-face teacher will not be doing. So again, this is one of the, this comes back to the heart of our greatest challenges. We're delivering a system that we're not intended to deliver. And it's never going to be perfectly fair or perfectly equitable. I can just tell you that right now. But this is why we're trying to manage everybody's load to the full extent possible. And why online teachers might have a few more kiddos in their class than a face-to-face teacher, because the face-to-face teachers are going to have a different type of duty, different type of job assignment. And I want our principals, we've been talking to them about this quite a bit too, because we don't want it to be everything is dumped on one or the other. Any assignment needs to be equitably, fairly split. Even duty, if you've got an online teacher teaching in a building, they can still do morning duties and those kinds of things, even though the schedule that they're working on is a little different. So again, I'm not going to pretend that everything is perfectly equitable, because it never will be. But we do recognize, and we're trying to balance the work to the best that we can to make sure all of our staff is used in a good, positive, efficient and effective way. How are we truly addressing the mental health issues that this pandemic will have on your educators? And again, this is the best that I can offer, is trying to balance load. And this is something I've talked about several times. It's trying to not overstress. It's also, to be honest, it is, I think we need to have some conversations continuing conversations about what self-care means. And I know that term is overused, but there comes a time where you just have to turn it off and go home. I have found that, even myself, I find it's easy to stay in it. And there comes a time where it has a dramatic impact on your own well-being and the well-being of your family. So sometimes I know this about myself and I know it about you. Some educators keep the pressure on themselves. And if that work is sitting on the desk to be done, they're going to keep working and keep doing it. And that's something I found myself victim of during this pandemic. Because if I'm at home all during the summer months when I was at home, it was easy just to work and work and work and work and realize, oh, wait a minute, it's 7:30 or 8 o'clock already. And my wife has been down several times tapping on the door asking me, are you coming to dinner or not? And then well, one more thing, one more thing. So it really is, it's the idea, whatever your role is, and I'm not trying to lecture, I'm just telling you what works for me, is you've got to set your boundaries. And this is where I want to do some of these teacher listening sessions, because if you believe your boundaries are being violated and you're being asked to keep going and going, then that's a problem, because you need to be able to get appropriate sleep. You need to be able to spend time with your significant other, with your family, your children. You need to, we're going to be working hard all day, every day, and extra hours all the time on a regular basis. I know that about all of us. But you still have got to figure out what your morning routine looks like to manage your self-care, what your evening routines look like. And you've got to be able to get to that healthy place of say, you know what, I'm just not done with everything I hope to get done today. Or even, you know what, I had a deadline, but I'm not going to meet that deadline today. And I'll just let them know later. And so that's where you keep hearing me talk about grace and compassion. I'm really talking to our principals and all of our leaders about, if someone misses that deadline, this is not a time to rip them a new one. This is a time to understand the load that you're carrying, and we want to help you manage your well-being. Of course, in a very real sense, we've got our employee assistance program, and I encourage you to make that call if you're struggling. I know we've had some teachers who are having significant mental health issues simply related to the pandemic, not even their job alone, but the job just makes it worse right now. And so when you put it all together, I just know that that system is there for you. The counseling that they provide is free for so many sessions, sometimes even just one session to process with somebody like that can really be very helpful. So please make it a priority and let me know if you believe you're in a situation that is just untenable, that you cannot manage. But no, my expectation of all of our leaders is that they are extending you lots of understanding, grace, compassion as you are carrying this load. And that's the best thing I know to do to help care for the well-being of our educators. Please consider 3 major grades in block schedule that lost time to hurricane for the end of the 9 weeks. So I know that what I hear you saying is this first grading period. I know that we're sticking with 3 for this reason. What we found, because we're hearing complaints from the other side, right? So there's this balance that if kids have too many grades, major grades, it can feel like pressure, and to them and to the teacher. If they have too few, it places the student at risk of getting a low grade because the 2 major grades are weighted too heavily. So we reduce the number to 3 and feel like that's manageable. But I do also know that and I know we've given this information to principals. It's my hope that it's been conveyed to teachers, is we've really extended lots of opportunity for teachers to make that grade, those major grades can be a lot more flexible. And you have a lot more latitude in what that 3rd major grade should be. We want it to be a real grade, but you've got lots of latitude in how to do that. That doesn't have to be a test, doesn't have to be a major project. It can be other types of things that you as a teacher deem would be appropriate as a major grade. So this is another way we're trying to manage, is to give that flexibility. What protections are offered for staff? What's being done in reference to the air quality in the buildings? We are in the process in regard to air quality. We've been changing out air filters. We are studying the air quality in our buildings. I mean, there's a number of things that we're doing to make sure because that our buildings are safe for you to return. This is another reason we're wearing masks, because we do have some of our buildings that could use better air quality, but masks help with that problem. So just know that that is something we're working on. There are some long-term solutions that we're going to have to enact. We're talking seriously about putting some things long-term to really just replace systems in some of our buildings. But in the near term, we've upgraded the type of air filter that does contain many more contaminants. So we think we've done a good job of protecting our buildings in that way. And of course, again, we've been doing analysis throughout our buildings to make sure that we do have good airflow, and that and if we have rooms that do not have good airflow, we will not be using those rooms with students and teachers. Just know that's another way that we're going to be protecting you. If only 40% are coming to face, why are so many systems being changed for the smallest percentage of students? So I'm not sure I fully understand that question. The fact is, basically, the way I would respond to the question is we are running dual systems. So systems are not necessarily being changed. We are going to keep running the online system in the same way we have been, but now we're standing up the face-to-face system. And so that is where we are. And so what that means is we do have to redirect teaching staff to the face-to-face model to stand that system up. So really, I think if you're teaching online, much of your world will remain unchanged. I think you'll be able to feel and feel good and feel like you're moving forward with a degree of consistency. You might see a few more students in your class, or some things that might be a little different, but the real change is coming on the face-to-face side, where we're having to stand up a whole new system. Do we anticipate the dual teaching streams continuing as a permanent feature of the district? I'm going to tell you no, but that's a qualified no. What I can tell you now is that we are planning to continue with dual systems through the end of this year. Now, but again, we don't know what the state will permit, because we don't know. There's so many external factors based on vaccines and different things. We don't know when all that's going to come to bear. And so I don't know today if we will not have another year like this. But as of today, we do have, we're planning on finishing this school year, but a lot of that question will come into clarity as we move into the next spring. I will tell you, we have learned things about our organization. We've learned things about our students and our teachers that as superintendent, I would hope over time we're able to have a virtual education system for the kids who really benefit and thrive in that environment. But that would not be something we develop over a 3 to 4 month period and stand up overnight the way we've had to do all of this. That would be a well-developed, well thought out virtual learning system that's staffed for that purpose, that is constructed in a certain way to make sure that the needs of the students are met. It would not be a dual system the way we're having to do it today. Someone has said that they've sent I really appreciate the affirmation from this person. They say, I really hear it, your voice, you're really making every attempt to make it safe for everybody. So I appreciate that affirmation. I tell you, everybody from the board to everybody in this organization is dedicated to supporting our kids and the teachers who serve them. Will teachers be able to request accommodations to work from home later on? Absolutely. We needed the firm deadline when we did that, because we needed to be able to plan. But no, that is the HR accommodations process is something that is ongoing, because their conditions change. If you're diagnosed with a health issue, if there's something going on with you, you absolutely can continue to file accommodations as needed, but into the future through HR. That's always been a process we have. We're due to the pandemic and online and virtual, with virtual and face-to-face, we're just handling them a little differently now. But yeah, absolutely, you can continue to file those as needed. Some feedback here. Thank you for thinking of our health and needs. We ask that you ensure that the clear messaging makes its way all the way down to HR and campuses. Absolutely. That is one of the reasons I wanted to visit with you directly, is for our teachers to hear directly from me the care and concern, and the expectations and what's to come. I think I've learned that managing expectations is critical. And so I want you to know that, and this is why, again, I want you to always feel comfortable. This is why we have Let's Talk. It's why we have email. I prefer Let's Talk because emails get bogged down and lost sometimes. But all of our Let's Talks are, you will get a response on those and we will follow up immediately. So, and again, I just think I have to be honest, and I don't want to ever, I'm not being negative when I say people lead differently. We have brand new principals and we have highly experienced principals. And just like superintendents and just like teachers have different strengths and abilities, no matter, though I believe every leader in this organization is doing their best, there's still going to be obstacles and challenges. So if you feel like you're facing one of those, then let us know how we can support you, maybe by supporting your leader, because we're all on the same team and we're not perfect and we'll never be perfect. So just know that I believe in our leaders, I believe in our principals, and I know they are all working hard to do their best under very stressful circumstances as well. Because as I've always say, our teachers are they're very, very important, but you can't do your job without a strong and effective principal leading the way. And that principal and your associate principals, your assistant principals, right now they're carrying a heavy load themselves, hand scheduling kids, and we're helping to support you so you don't change the number of students. We want you to be able to have a balanced load, and we want you to continue with as many of the same students that you have today as possible. There will be change. There has to be, because we're standing up a dual system. But we want you to be able to maintain as much continuity as possible, whichever environment you're in. Are teachers going to be allowed to eat together and chat during lunch to help with their own mental health? It sounded like all common areas were closed. That's a very good question. And so I'm not going to state an answer that I don't know the answer to, but I will tell you, it seems reasonable to me that if the adults, if you had a few adults in a room eating together, socially distanced at different tables, and just like it looks like in a restaurant, it seems to me that would be safe, but we will confirm that and get that message to principals right away. How will we be able to have a conference each day? If my conference is 4th, when will I be able to have a conference on 5th through 8th period days? So since we're doing an AB block, the periods are 90 minutes. So essentially you'll have double conferences on A day or B day. So you're going to absolutely get the time, and we're going to be in compliance with all the laws around this, but it's likely you will not have that full conference. You won't have the conference every single day. You'll have some built-in, probably some breaks during the day between your periods, but your actual 45-minute required conference will be combined into one 90-minute block every other day. Another comment, it seems there is some contradictory info here. Teacher safety is a priority, yet teachers are going back to almost a crowded classroom. Please explain. So this is a good question, right? Because this comes down to, there's a lot of personal belief and personal concern in all aspects of this pandemic. So number one, we're not going to have crowded classrooms. We're going to manage the classroom size based on guidance from CDC, TEA, and other sources. Everyone's wearing a mask, and the rule has been cover your face, wash your hands, and distance. So the goal is to do all three of those things in a way that allows students and staff in the building to stay distant. This is also why we're allowing for the accommodations for our staff if they believe that medically it's not safe for them to be in that environment, because it will not be for all staff. But in my view, it's not contradictory. What we're doing is following carefully developed health and safety protocols that are based on external sources, but thoroughly vetted by a number of local healthcare providers as well, who have publicly discussed the high quality of our health and safety protocols. So I don't feel like we're being contradictory. I think we're being honest that there's always in every situation, even going to the grocery store, at risk. But we believe at this point that the overall environment of our community in regard to the pandemic and the healthcare protocols are intended and designed to keep our teachers and our students safe and healthy. Have you considered having feeder pattern webinars to hear the multifaceted concerns that the district has? Or does the west side of the district get your time? Well, so there's a little judgment in that question, because I can assure you there's no region of the district that demands or gets more of my time than another. I'm visiting classrooms, all campuses across the whole district. I talk to teachers and principals from all campuses. And I'm sorry if that sounds somewhat defensive, but there is a little judgment in that question. I'm superintendent for the entire district, and I care about equity for every single student, as does our board. So no, there is no region of the district who's getting more of our time right now. But what I like about this suggestion is, as I do these teacher listening opportunities, I do like the idea of doing them on a feeder pattern basis, because it'll provide a little more insight into unique needs of our communities, because each of our feeder patterns is unique, and and equity has been the top priority. I've said each step of the way that our solutions may not be the same solution in every single school. And so I appreciate that suggestion to do those based on feeder patterns, and I think that's how we will structure those. How can the district help manage expectations of parents? We're being contacted at all hours. I stayed up till 1 a.m. last night answering emails, grading, and posting my lessons. What is the priority? Emails, grading. I can't keep this up. Amen. You cannot keep it up. So, but I appreciate this question. We are working hard to manage parent expectations. Unfortunately, and I said this to the Board of Trustees recently. As a public school district, parents see us, they see the organization because they know the schools, they trust their schools, and they've partnered with the schools for a while. They, with all of the uncontrollable aspects of our world today, with the racial tensions, with the election, the pandemic, all these things going on around them, parents believe they can control the school and they can control their child's experience. And that's what's showing up in a lot of the emails and the messaging, consistent messaging you're getting from parents. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things. One thing that I do that I've done is I think you can set up an auto message reply on your email, and we will support you in this as an organization that says, due to the nature of schooling during the pandemic, trust that I will read your email. And maybe instead of a 24-hour turnaround, we give them a 48-hour turnaround, unless it's an emergency or extenuating circumstance. But I think you've given me a suggestion on how maybe we can organizationally do some things. So I'll be working with our school leadership team and our communications team to see during this transition how we can maybe better manage parent expectations and give clear guidance to them and provide some clear guidance for staff on what that looks like. Because you know as well as I do, your top priority right now is being prepared for your students and assessing their progress so that they can know how they're doing, and you can keep adapting your intervention strategies and your teaching strategies each step of the way. That is the priority. Do not stay up till 1 a.m. answering emails. I'm just telling you that now. Don't do it. And we will support you in that. But you've given me the importance that I need to do something. We're going to need to do something to really set clear expectations and support teachers in this. So thank you for bringing that up. Your priority, since you asked, as I said, is teaching, preparing your lessons, and assessing your students. And then you do have to engage with parents, especially as kids are challenged, but we need to prioritize that and make sure we're building that into an appropriate day schedule. Are students required to get tested, quarantined before coming back to school? So that we've already answered that question. So the answer is yes, they absolutely will be. So it is 8:28, and I'm going to tell you, I did not think this would take an hour. I didn't think I'd be on here an hour. I thought you'd have a few questions, but it means a lot to me that you would join me this early in the morning on a Monday, especially. So thank you for making time. Thank you for the good questions and for giving me a chance to share this information with you directly. The two things I'm going to close with. One, I know this was early for secondary. We're doing another one of these events at 3 p.m. today. It says for elementary, but really, as you can see, it's good information for all teachers. So please, if you have a colleague or who says, hey, I missed it or I didn't know, because I know the invitation went out a little bit late Friday, please feel free. Anybody can attend. And it's for all grade levels at 3 o'clock this afternoon. If you have a colleague who missed it, please tell them they should feel free to join us at 3 o'clock this afternoon for the same discussion. And we'll answer any questions. Or if you would like to come back again, that would be great as well. And I'm going to go back and again, the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is, and we're going to be talking about this more in the board meeting tonight if you'd like to watch. So much, and I mentioned, so much of what that's driving us right now is the box that we're in with state funding, the pandemic, meeting students' needs. All these things are aligning in such a way that it is placing a heavy load on our teachers. So if you can join me in sending emails to our commissioner, and not just the commissioner, but an email, a letter, a phone call to the governor's office, to the lieutenant governor's office, to let them know they need to hold us harmless for attendance for this entire year to avoid a revenue loss in our district that will be negative for our whole district. So we're going to have some information online about that. We'll be talking about it more, but they listen to teachers, they listen to community members. So we're going to have to get the word out and doing everything we can to advocate that our state holds us harmless on financing during this critical period when we need every dollar that they should be funding. So with that, again, I want to thank you, everyone, for giving me a few minutes this morning. It's 8:31. You get busy. I'm going to get busy. Got a board meeting tonight. Have an outstanding day. And thank you again for your time, your attention, for your affirmation, but more importantly, for your leadership and for the straight up dedication and hard work you're putting into your kiddos every single day. Love you guys, and I appreciate you. Have a great day.